The alarm clock buzzed, but Emma was already awake, staring out at the city that seemed to move just fine without her. Her breath fogged the glass as she traced absent-minded circles with her finger, her thoughts racing. Today wasn't just another day. Outside, the sounds of honking cars and hurried footsteps filled the air, a symphony of a world that felt both distant and unforgiving. Emma turned away from the window, the harsh light catching the frayed edges of her blazer. It was the best she could afford, bought secondhand after her youngest, Lily, outgrew yet another pair of shoes. Her apartment was small but meticulously tidy, a testament to her relentless effort to create a sense of stability for her 2 kids. A breakfast of peanut butter sandwiches sat untouched on the counter. In the corner, her son's science project leaned precariously against a stack of overdue bills. Emma caught her reflection in the mirror by the door. Dark circles underlined her eyes, a map of sleepless nights spent juggling freelance work, online classes, and the unending demands of motherhood. She adjusted the collar of her blazer and practiced her smile, confident, capable, unshakable. But deep down, doubt clawed at her. This interview at Orion Enterprises wasn't just a chance at a job, it was a lifeline, a way to pull herself and her kids out of the cycle of scraping by. Emma had read about Orion's state-of-the-art tech division, their projects shaping industries. Getting hired would mean a steady income, a chance to rebuild, maybe even a sliver of a future where she didn't have to choose between groceries and electricity. She picked up her portfolio, the worn leather folder containing years of her work, her lifeline. A quick glance at the family photo tucked inside gave her pause. It was a candid shot from their last family day, a term she used loosely for afternoons spent in the park with a picnic of dollar store snacks. Her son's toothy grin and Lily's mischievous smile filled her with resolve. As Emma walked out the door, rain began to fall, a soft drizzle that blurred the city into a palette of grays and silvers. She clutched her folder tighter, unaware of how much this day would change her life. Sometimes the people dismissed as powerless are the ones who hold the greatest potential. Emma didn't know it yet, but today she wasn't just chasing a job. She was stepping into a story that would rewrite everything. Emma tightened her grip on her portfolio as she stood at the reception desk. The receptionist, a young woman in a crisp black suit, barely glanced at her before directing her to the 27th floor. As the elevator ascended, Emma couldn't help but notice her own reflection in the mirrored walls. Her blazer looked more worn under the harsh fluorescent lights, and the small coffee stain on her skirt suddenly felt glaringly obvious. She straightened her posture, inhaled deeply, and reminded herself of her mantra, "I am prepared. I am capable." The doors slid open, revealing a sleek office space bustling with activity. Employees in designer suits moved with precision, their voices low and purposeful. Emma felt like an outsider in this world, but she squared her shoulders and stepped out, guided by the receptionist's instructions, to the conference room. Inside, Mark Harrington, the CEO of Orion Enterprises, waited with 2 other executives. Mark was the kind of man who exuded power and privilege. His tailored suit, perfectly coiffed hair, and air of effortless confidence seemed to fill the room. He looked up from a tablet as Emma entered, offering a tight, perfunctory smile. "Emma Peterson, right?" he said, his voice smooth but distant. "Take a seat." Emma sat, her portfolio resting on her lap. She introduced herself, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. The initial questions were straightforward: her experience, technical skills, and approach to project management. She answered each one with confidence, explaining how her freelance projects had given her hands-on experience in software development and client management. Then came the shift. Mark leaned back in his chair, his expression sharp and calculating. "You have an impressive story, Emma," he said, "but I have to ask, how do you expect to handle the demands of a high-pressure environment like this, given your situation?" Emma hesitated, unsure of what he meant. "My situation?" Mark's smirk widened. "You're a single mother, right? 2 kids? It's admirable, really. But let's be honest. This role requires focus, late nights, and travel. We need people who can give 110%. No distractions." The room went silent, the weight of his words settling over her like a lead blanket. Emma clenched her hands under the table, her mind racing. "I assure you," she said, her voice steady, "I've managed more with less. My life may be different, but I've proven I can deliver results." Mark chuckled, a cold, dismissive sound. "That's good to hear. But let's face it, Emma, you're up against candidates with far fewer commitments. Sometimes the best intentions just don't cut it in the real world." The interview ended with polite formalities, but Emma left the room feeling crushed. As the elevator doors closed behind her, she realized Mark's words weren't just about her. They were a reflection of a system designed to keep people like her out. Emma sat on the worn couch in her tiny apartment that night, her portfolio still unopened on the coffee table. The rejection wasn't new. She'd faced plenty of setbacks before, but Mark Harrington's words lingered, sharper than she expected. They weren't just dismissive, they were symbolic of a world that refused to see her worth because her path didn't fit the traditional mold. Her children's laughter echoed from the next room, a bittersweet reminder of why she couldn't afford to give up. Clara, Emma's best friend and unwavering cheerleader, arrived later with her usual flair. Clara had been Emma's rock through countless late-night phone calls and emergency babysitting stints. Tonight she brought a bottle of cheap wine and her unfiltered advice. "You're letting some arrogant CEO live rent-free in your head," Clara said, pouring them both a glass. "Why do you even want to work for someone like that?" Emma sighed. "Because I need stability, Clara. Steady paychecks, benefits, something real. I can't keep scraping by on freelance gigs forever." Clara leaned forward, her expression serious now. "What if you didn't have to work for someone like that? What if you worked for yourself?" Emma laughed, but Clara didn't join in. "I'm serious," Clara continued. "You're brilliant, Emma. You've been building systems, solving problems, and managing chaos for years. What if you took all of that and created something that actually valued people like you?" The idea lingered in Emma's mind long after Clara left. At first it felt impossible. Start her own business? How? With what money? But as the days passed, it began to feel less like a pipe dream and more like a challenge. She started sketching ideas in the margins of her notebook during her kids' bedtime stories, brainstorming ways to turn her skills into something tangible. Emma's turning point came when she attended a local tech meetup on Clara's insistence. There she met Javier, a seasoned software developer who had recently left the corporate world to freelance. Javier, a father of 3, immediately understood Emma's struggles and aspirations. Over coffee, they exchanged ideas and frustrations about the industry's lack of flexibility and inclusivity. "You know," Javier said, "there's a huge gap in the market for what you're talking about. A platform for people like us, skilled, experienced, but overlooked because we don't fit the traditional 9-to-5 mold." Inspired, Emma threw herself into the idea. She spent nights drafting plans for what would eventually become InnovateHer, a platform designed to connect skilled freelancers, particularly parents and caregivers, with companies looking for flexible, high-quality talent. Clara helped her with marketing strategies, while Javier joined as a technical advisor. But progress wasn't easy. Emma faced countless rejections when pitching her idea to investors. One told her outright, "You're building a charity, not a business. No one's going to pay for feel-good hiring." Others questioned her credentials, pointing out her lack of formal business experience. Despite the setbacks, Emma pressed on. She started small, using her own savings and a crowdfunding campaign to build a prototype. The campaign attracted attention on social media, with stories of parents and caregivers sharing their struggles resonating far beyond Emma's expectations. Soon, InnovateHer had its first clients, small businesses willing to take a chance on her vision. Meanwhile, Mark Harrington was grappling with his own challenges at Orion Enterprises. The company had been vying for a partnership with InnovateHer, the leading innovator in artificial intelligence, but negotiations were stalling. InnovateHer's CEO Vivian Chen was known for her progressive approach and her insistence on working with companies that prioritized inclusivity and innovation. Orion's corporate culture, steeped in traditionalism, wasn't doing them any favors. Emma's small victories began to snowball. InnovateHer started gaining traction, attracting media attention for its mission to redefine workplace flexibility. A local journalist wrote a feature on Emma, dubbing her the voice for the overlooked workforce. The article went viral, drawing the attention of none other than InnovateHer. One morning, Emma received an email from InnovateHer's partnership team, inviting her to discuss a potential collaboration. It felt surreal, sitting in the same room as industry leaders who genuinely valued what she brought to the table. InnovateHer's team was impressed with InnovateHer's growth and its potential to revolutionize hiring practices. But success came with its own complications. Emma began receiving unsolicited advice from larger companies offering to buy InnovateHer outright. She knew selling would provide financial security, but it would also mean losing control over her vision. Then came the legal threats. Orion Enterprises accused InnovateHer of infringing on intellectual property, a baseless claim clearly meant to intimidate her. Emma's team rallied around her. Clara organized a public relations campaign to counter Orion's claims, leveraging the support of InnovateHer's growing community. Javier worked tirelessly to strengthen the platform's security and scalability, ensuring they could handle the increasing demand. As InnovateHer continued to rise, Emma couldn't ignore the irony. The very company that had dismissed her was now scrambling to compete with her. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, Emma felt the scales tipping in her favor. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building something that could change the game for herself, her children, and countless others who deserved a fair shot. The air in the InnovateHer boardroom was electric with anticipation. Emma sat at the head of the long, glass-topped table, flanked by Clara and Javier. Across from them, Vivian Chen, InnovateHer's CEO, listened intently as Emma outlined InnovateHer's mission, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Inclusivity isn't just a buzzword," Emma said, her gaze unwavering. "It's the future. Our platform proves that overlooked talent can drive innovation when given the chance. It's not charity, it's smart business." The executives nodded thoughtfully, but the tension in the room thickened as the door opened. Mark Harrington strode in, his confident demeanor masking the desperation he felt. He wasn't just here to observe, he was here to salvage Orion Enterprises' failing partnership prospects with InnovateHer. "Apologies for the interruption," Mark said, flashing a tight smile as he took a seat. His eyes flicked to Emma, recognition sparking an undercurrent of unease. "I wasn't aware InnovateHer was leading this presentation. Emma Peterson, isn't it?" Emma felt a jolt of indignation but maintained her composure. "That's correct," she replied evenly, refusing to let him rattle her. Mark leaned back, feigning casual interest. "InnovateHer has had an impressive rise, but let's be realistic. Scaling a business like this requires experience and infrastructure. Orion has both. With the right partnership, we could ensure its long-term success." The implication was clear. He wanted to absorb InnovateHer into Orion Enterprises, stripping Emma of control over the very vision she had built from scratch. Vivian raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by the dynamic unfolding before her. "Emma," she said, "how would you respond to that offer? Could InnovateHer benefit from a partnership with Orion?" Emma took a deep breath, her mind flashing back to that fateful interview and the way Mark had dismissed her. This was more than business. This was a chance to confront the systemic bias that had held her back and so many others like her for so long. Emma began, her voice firm. InnovateHer was built because companies like Orion have failed to see the value in diverse talent. You've ignored the potential of single mothers, caregivers, and anyone whose life doesn't fit into a narrow definition of commitment. I know, because I was one of them. Mark's expression hardened, but Emma pressed on, her words gaining momentum. "I'm not interested in scaling at the cost of our principles. InnovateHer is about rewriting the narrative, not fitting into the old one." The room fell silent, the weight of Emma's conviction hanging in the air. Clara leaned forward, her voice cutting through the tension. If Orion really wanted to support innovation, they wouldn't need to co-opt it. They'd adapt. But that's not what they do, is it? Mark's mask of composure cracked. "That's enough," he snapped. "This is business, not a soapbox." Vivian's sharp voice interrupted, her tone icy. "Actually, Mr. Harrington, this is exactly the kind of conversation we should be having. InnovateHer represents what's missing in our industry, a willingness to challenge outdated systems. And quite frankly, I don't see that same vision from Orion." Emma's heart pounded as she realized what was happening. Vivian wasn't just listening, she was choosing sides. Mark stood abruptly, his frustration spilling over. "You can't seriously be considering them over us. InnovateHer is a startup with no track record. Orion is a powerhouse." Vivian's gaze was steely. Powerhouses fall when they fail to evolve. And InnovateHer may be new, but they're what this industry needs. I'll take forward thinking over stagnation any day. Mark stormed out, leaving Emma stunned. The room buzzed with energy as NovaTech's executives leaned in, excitedly discussing the possibilities of the partnership. Emma felt a swell of pride and relief as Vivian turned to her with a rare smile. "This is just the beginning, Emma," she said. "Let's change the game together." Emma nodded, her resolve stronger than ever. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she was fighting for everyone who deserved a seat at the table. And now, she had the power to make it happen. The weeks following the NovaTech partnership announcement were a whirlwind for Emma. InnovateHer quickly scaled its operations, onboarding new clients and freelancers from across the country. The platform became a lifeline for people who had been overlooked for jobs, single parents, caregivers, and others seeking opportunities that valued their skills without penalizing their circumstances. Emma's personal life transformed alongside her professional success. The once cramped apartment was replaced with a cozy home where her children had their own rooms and a backyard to play in. Nights were no longer spent agonizing over overdue bills. Instead, they were filled with bedtime stories and laughter. Emma's son, inspired by her resilience, started talking about becoming an engineer. Lily proudly told her classmates, "My mom helps people get jobs." But Emma's success wasn't just about her family, it rippled outward, creating a movement that challenged industries to rethink how they valued and supported their workforce. InnovateHer became a symbol of what was possible when inclusivity was prioritized, sparking discussions in boardrooms and at kitchen tables alike. Other companies followed suit, adopting more flexible and empathetic hiring practices. Emma occasionally thought about Mark Harrington. Orion Enterprises faced public backlash after the NovaTech deal fell through. With employees coming forward about the toxic work culture Emma had experienced firsthand. Mark eventually stepped down, his resignation letter citing a desire to explore other opportunities. Emma felt no need for vindication. Her focus was on building, not dwelling on the past. At InnovateHer's first annual conference, Emma stood on stage before a packed audience of freelancers, allies, and executives who had supported the platform. The energy in the room was electric as she shared her journey, from being dismissed in that Orion boardroom to leading a company that was reshaping the workforce. "This isn't just my story," she said, her voice steady and strong. "It's all of ours. We're proving that resilience, talent, and determination matter more than outdated stereotypes. Together, we're not just opening doors, we're breaking them down." The room erupted in applause, but Emma's gaze lingered on a mother sitting in the front row, her young daughter beaming beside her. It was a reminder of why this fight mattered. As the conference ended, Emma left the stage with a renewed sense of purpose. Her story was proof that change was possible, not just for her but for everyone willing to challenge injustice and demand better. The future wasn't just brighter, it was finally inclusive.